Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon throughout the world. I'm Rizwan Akram here in Connecting the World. So as usual, in Connecting the World, we have some very special guests all around the globe who are doing something that is amazing. The things that are working for the benefit of people, welfare of people, self-development, human behavior learning, and all about the things that can improve the values in the life of the people. So today I have a very special guest, Brittney-Nichole. So Brittney is a writer, a speaker, an NLP practitioner, and doing a lot of things for adding value to the people. So Brittney, welcome to Connecting the World.
Thank you, Rizwan, for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Brittney, would you like to share about yourself first? You have a long introduction. So if I'm going to introduce you, it may take a lot of time. So would you like to share about yourself first?
Sure. So as you said, my name is Brittney-Nichole. I'm in the U.S. I'm on the East Coast in North Carolina, and I am an emotional intelligence and communication specialist. My background is in psychology and education, and I am the founder of Catalyst for Change, LLC, as well as Generation EQ. Catalyst for Change focuses on working with businesses and entrepreneurs on fostering emotional intelligence and communication, and Generation EQ works with families and children.
That's amazing, and that's super cool. So Brittney, a question that I usually ask to every guest, that whenever you were getting education in your childhood, what was your dream? How you seen different professionals? What was your inspiration at that time?
That's a really good question. And the short answer is I had no clue what I wanted to do. Well, actually, I take that back. When I was very young, I wanted to be a singer.
You are still young?
When I was a child, I wanted to be a singer. And while I probably could have pursued that as my career if I would have really put a lot of time and effort into that and taking vocal classes and so on and so forth, that wasn't really seen as a realistic profession, right? An artist, a musician, those things are what many people consider as dream jobs. Stick with something that's safe and what you know. And other than that, I had no clue. My parents both worked in factories, so they had no college education. They started working right after high school, but they knew that they wanted more for me. And I'm an only child, so they wanted to send me to college. But that was scary for me because I knew nothing about education after high school. And they really didn't know how to foster that because they had never had someone guide them through that. So I started out in a community college, and I was working towards getting my bachelor's in education. And I was about 3 years in because I had failed a few classes, so it was taking me a little bit longer to transfer. And my third year, I said, I can't do this. I'm not meant for college. It's not for everyone. It's not meant for me. So I left with just my associates in early childhood education. And I left and I started working at a private school, first as an assistant teacher, then as a lead, more of pre-K, so 5-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds. And I decided, I like working with children, but this isn't for me. So then I went to starting my own photography business, and I did wedding photography and marketing for a while. Someone at Del Hayes America, which is a Fortune 500, I believe they're a Fortune 500 organization. Anyways, they found my business card. I started doing product photography for this company for 3 years. And then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And that is when I realized psychology is my passion. I had found out about psychology and taken some classes in high school, but I never really thought of pursuing it as a career, mainly because my parents told me in order to pursue psychology, you need to have at least a master's, probably a doctorate, to make money doing that. And they did not see that for someone who was a C- student. My grades were terrible in school. I was taken out of classes, put in special needs classes. I was probably
as usual. It happens with the successful people,
right? So now I don't feel so bad about it. But when I was in school, I was 2 to 3 grade levels behind my peers. And that was discouraging. And so I always had this entrepreneurial spirit, and I knew that I had more to offer than working for someone else. And so when I went back to school for psychology, once I graduated, I went into a corporate world. I was working for a Fortune 500 company, a bank. But then I started to notice all of these similar issues that I used to face in my personal life with managing and regulating my emotions. And I said, I think that there's something bigger to it than this. I want to help people discover themselves the way I've discovered myself. And I didn't really talk about that. If you'd like, I can kind of talk about that transition as well, because all of this kind of works in together. But when I was a young child, I experienced a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think that stemmed from anxiety and depression was in my family. And I was just told that it's part of our genes. It's hereditary. We have anxiety and depression, therefore you should have anxiety and depression. And now looking back, I just realized that my family did not know how to manage their emotions and effectively communicate. Therefore, I modeled their behavior, and I did not know how to manage my emotions and effectively communicate. So I was placed on anti-anxiety medicine at 15 years old. And then by my early 20s, I was suffering from severe panic attacks that were triggered randomly out of nowhere. So I was experiencing all of these crazy emotions, didn't know what to do with myself. But when I was in college for psychology, I started to learn about mindfulness and how our thoughts create our reality. And at that point, I was desperate. Anxiety medicine was working kind of, but it wasn't taking care of the underlying issues. It was only addressing the symptoms. But when I started to apply mindfulness and these things that now accompany emotional intelligence or components of emotional intelligence, I was able to transform my life and do a complete 180. I was able to manage my anxiety. I was able to have a better outlook on life. I was able to regulate my emotions. And when I realized that I was not a product of my environment, that I did not have to suffer from anxiety and the things that my family suffered from, then I realized that there's hope for other people. And that kind of is what led into this whole snowball effect of getting into my business. So that's the long story. Am I frozen? Oh no, it looks like we lost him.
Brittney.
Yes.
At what point you come out of those stress and any anxiety? What was the point in your life that you feel it's a turning point in your life?
It's kind of a gradient. There wasn't ever like a flip of a switch, things just automatically changed. But if I had to pinpoint an age that it all happened.
Brittney?
Yes. Can you hear me? I can hear you. So it was around age probably 24, 25-ish. Because I graduated college. I was an untraditional student. I went back to college when I was 23. So I think the pivotal moment or the pivotal year for that major change was starting at age 23, but probably around age 25 was when things really started to change and the lights started to come on. And then it just accelerated from there. And I'm continuing to grow and develop and learn. That never stops for any of us. But I noticed a significant change in my lack of severe anxiety and panic attacks around the age of 25. There you are.
I am back. My signal lost, and so I turned the router towards myself, which happens when you are living some far from you. So, Brittney, I want to know about the secret that what are you making or adding value to the people? Like, are you a catalyst? Are you a change, or are you for?
So I am a catalyst for change, right? That is, all of us are a catalyst for change. But what change are we catalyzing? And I think that's what's important, because we are models for someone in our life, whether we realize it or not. People are looking at us. And if we are behaving inappropriately, someone is also going to model that behavior and behave inappropriately. So what I'm trying to do is be a positive model for other people. Unfortunately, so many people tell others what they should be doing, but do not take their own advice. And I think it's really important that we humble ourselves. We own up to our failures. We own up to our flaws, because that is a learning experience. It shows to others that we are not perfect. No one is perfect, and we all have room to grow. And I think that's super important. I will never be an expert, although people may call me an expert at some point in my life. But at what level do you become an expert? Because again, we are always learning. We can be knowledgeable in a field. We can educate people. We can teach people. But I think if we ever get to a point where we feel like we know enough to stop learning, then we're no longer humble, and we can no longer be a positive influence in that sense, because anyone who personifies this artificial perfection, then it gives others false hope that that's something that they can attain.
Brittney, I don't know, either it's a myth or either it's a fact. You are the students of some mind sciences, so would you like to share about that? People usually say that when you are 8 years old, your subconscious are developed up to 90%. If you have feeling the stress in your childhood, how can you cope up? Like if you have developed your stress level at the age of 15, so much anxiety. So how you cope up with that in your next stage or next years?
So I think when people say that by the age of 7 and around that age that you have developed into the person that you're going to be, I think that your behaviors are conditioned at that point, but that does not mean you cannot change and grow and develop. That's false. Our brains are plastic, meaning that they are malleable. They can change and adapt, but it takes more effort to do that. That's the difference, is the effort that it takes to change. Because up to that age, around 7, we're still growing and developing who we are. And then around that age, we say, okay, this is who we are. These are my beliefs. This is what has been indoctrinated in me. And from there, it's more difficult to change. But as long as you are open to developing and growing, anyone can change. It just takes more effort.
That's nice. Brittney, whenever people comes to you, how do you think that, what are the maximum number of issues that people are facing nowadays? What is the, if you like to sum up the major problems that you are facing with the people?
Anxiety, fear, loneliness, lack of connection. I think all of those are the primary issues we face today. And I think the reason that we have these issues is because of these indoctrinations and social norms that are scripts that we're supposed to play out in our lives. And we're told what to do and how to do that, but we're never really told why. And we're never asked what we want, who we are. It's all about molding us into what we feel like society wants us to be. And I think that's where a lot of these issues stem, is because we never really take the time to ask ourselves, who am I? Why do I behave in the ways that I do? Why is this behavior expected of me? If someone tells me at a young age, let's say that I hurt another kid, let's say I kick another kid in the leg, then I'm prompted by my parents to say, what do you say? And I'm expected to say, sorry. But what if I'm not sorry? So then we start behaving in this way that we do things, we respond with what's appropriate by telling people I'm sorry. But if we're not truly sorry and we don't embody that empathy and that remorse, that leads to our problems. That leads to our lack of connection, our lack of empathy. And that's where I think we need to start adopting these strategies and these skills of emotional intelligence so that it's at a deeper level, that we're embodying the willingness, the want, the desire to be compassionate and care for other people, but also for ourselves, because we also lack self-compassion.
Brittany, would you like to share the solution of this problem, like how the people cope up? Like, we are living in a, as people said, that humans are social animal. So we are living in a society. We can't be alone out of the society. We have to listen to people around us. So how we can cope up these situations? Like, if the people are saying something that is not like-minded or something like that's not in our favor, how we can cope up?
We have to first realize that reality is comprised of so many different perspectives beyond the human perspective. For example, there's some animals that see in infrared. Other animals use sonar. All of these are parts of reality that we cannot experience or understand. And it goes at a level, at a human being's level too, in that we can't expect others to have the same beliefs that we have. That's part of their reality. And coming to terms with that is something that is liberating in a sense. Now, there are facts, right? Gravity is real, but many of the things that we label as true are really just our beliefs. They're not absolute truths. And when it comes to connecting with other people, instead of trying to push our beliefs onto them, we need to see this as an opportunity to learn something, to try to understand where they're coming from and see their perspective. That doesn't mean our belief systems have to change. But if we are truly open-minded, then we can hear those beliefs and those ideas and ideologies of another person and not feel personally attacked, not become defensive, and not feel the need to impose on their reality. I think that will really help us connect, because right now we're becoming more and more polarized as a society.
So, Brittany, here is a question. How can we inculcate mindfulness in ourselves? And you need some practical tips.
First is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. And that's understanding, what are we feeling? Why are we feeling that? Instead of looking at the symptoms, we need to find the underlying need to that. And also asking ourselves, do we have a realistic perception of who we are? because that's where we lack. That's where you can really tell if you have emotional intelligence, is if you perceive yourself in the same way that the majority of people see you. There's always going to be those outliers, meaning that there's always going to be those people that are projecting their insecurities onto you and will tell you that you're a terrible person or judge you because internally they judge themselves and feel like they're a terrible person. So when I tell people to get insight onto how other people perceive them, I ask them to search for a large pool of data. And with any sound research, the larger your data pool, the more accurate you can pinpoint that information, because again, there's always going to be outliers. So when, let's say that you ask 15 people, how do you perceive my leadership ability or my listening skills? If you rate yourself at a 7 as a good leader, and the majority of people rate you as a 6, 7, or 8, then you have a fairly accurate perception. There's always going to be somebody that rates you as a 10 or somebody that rates you as a 2, but it's what does the majority say? What is the average, right? And if it aligns with who you believe you are, then you're self-aware, which is a component of emotional intelligence. If they rate you at a 9 and you see yourself at a 3, that means that you have something to work on. You are more insecure. You actually have more ability than you think you do, according to that survey. So that's the first step, is being aware of that. And then the next step would be to start regulating your emotions, which I would say is one of the most difficult things to do. It's one thing to know something, to know whether we're aware or not, or have strengths and what they are and weaknesses. But then how do you apply that? And when you're in a situation where you are stressed and when you want to react on impulse, how do you control that? And that takes a lot of practice and self-control. But I say it starts with breathing, because you get into that state of fight or flight and you're in self-preservation mode and your sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear. And what happens is when you're in that state, all your body cares about, your instincts, is save me. I need to protect myself. The rational brain shuts down and you can't think. But when you're in that critical mode, you need to think. So that's where you have to find a way to override that emotional hijacking that happens. And one way to do that is to regulate that sympathetic nervous system and bring it down, to slow it down and get into the parasympathetic. So that means taking deeper, longer breaths to control that, which will lower your heart rate and get you out of that state. So I'd say that would be one of the first things to do. Then you can take it another step further.
So Brittney, here is another question from Wahab Ali Bukhari. I hope you can see it. Even if you could understand the realities of other person, it is still hard to be close to someone who has a very different worldview. How can we make it easy?
It is very difficult. I don't know if you can make it easy, but it's more about coming from that place of understanding. Think of it as that person is a storybook. You may not agree with the story. The story may not be your genre per se, but just think of it as a story and just listen to them and ask questions. But when I say ask questions, you have to be very careful with the questions you ask and how you're asking those questions. Because if you're not asking from a place of genuine curiosity, then it can be very judgmental questions or leading questions. For example, how can you believe that? Why do you think that that's the right way? Or how, so those are more judgmental questions. But if you say, well, tell me a little bit more about how you came to believe that way. Is that something that your parents believe? Well, what would you say if this? So you're asking questions because you want to learn more. Again, it doesn't mean that you're always going to agree. You can have some very strong feelings. I have very strong feelings about certain political views and religious views and ideologies that will probably never change. but that doesn't mean I can't get to know that person. And then find common ground. That's another important thing. What do you have in common with that person? Because when we have that extreme polarization with two different, very different belief systems, we can start to see that person as very ignorant, or maybe see them as a villain or a bad person. But then if we ask them, well, tell me about your family. Do you have children? Tell me about your background. Get to know them on a personal level, separate from those beliefs, and find that common ground. That makes it easier.
Oh, that's cool. Brittney, the last question I would like to ask you about. If you are facing a person who's somehow not suiting your personality, like whenever you see a person, you feel something very bad within yourself, but you have to stay with him or her because of some professional or some other relations. How you can manage that time to make yourself ease?
That can be tough, especially if you're stuck with someone that you're not very compatible with. That can be extremely challenging. I would say first ask yourself, what is it about this person that I am having these feelings? Why am I having these feelings about this person? Is it the way that they communicate with me? Is it differing beliefs? What is it specifically? And then address that with that person. Now, some people are extremely confrontational. And even if you try to address something in the appropriate way, they may just lash out and react to you. And I always say, however strong the communication is that they're projecting onto you, they have that same energy built up in them. So if someone is extremely hostile and angry towards you, but you haven't really done anything, then that means that they are beating up on themselves internally just as much. So instead of seeing them as a villain, try to see them as a person that is hurting, a person that needs validation, a person that needs to be understood, so that you can kind of break open that hardened shell that they have created, that defense mechanism, so you can foster that healthy communication. And this can take time, but I have found from personal experience that being assertive, some people think that whenever you do that, whenever you react to them in that way, and you come from that place of understanding, that you are allowing them to run over you, and that you are giving them permission to abuse you both verbally or physically. First off, physically, I would say run, get out of that relationship. But verbally, we don't have to take what they're giving us. We can still be assertive and say, I do not appreciate you talking to me this way. I am a human being and I deserve respect, and I want to respect you, but it's really difficult to respect you when I feel like you don't respect me. Now, they still may come back at you and say, well, I don't care, right? Which shows low emotional intelligence. So how do you handle that and say, but why don't you care?
Oh.
Why do you not care? And they're used to having pushback. They're not used to being asked questions. Well, that's curious. Why don't you care? And then they're going to be like, because, and they may struggle and say, well, I would really like to know, because I would imagine that you care how people talk to you and if people respect you, right? And start opening up that communication. That is what I would say. Empathy and open-ended questions to foster communication. You have to break down that wall of defense.
So it means the communication is the main essence of all the relationship, either if you want to stuck with that or either you want to leave it. So
yeah,
here is Malik Abrar saying, when I can join, brother, you can join anytime, whenever you are free. So Brittney, would you like to tell about, do you think it's possible to totally change belief system of oneself? like install completely new software? Wahab, I think that updation of the software is possible. Installing new software is something. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely change your system of beliefs. It may take time, it may not happen overnight, but the way that the brain is wired, again, it's malleable. And what we do is we prune these existing neural connections and then we create new ones. So yes, you can change a system of beliefs. You can change anything. I mean, I've changed a lot of things about myself.
How much time it's needed to update a belief system?
It really varies from person to person. Some people, it can change within a day. And when I say that, it's because if you've been raised to think something about a certain group of people, you've been told your whole life, this group of people is bad. This is the wrong way of thinking. If you didn't have any other information, then that's what you're going to think. But if you get your hands on new information, or you have an experience where you've been exposed to that group of people and you realize, oh, they're not bad. So for example, I'm going to give you an example. So I was raised in a Christian home. And unfortunately, and the sad reality is after 9/11, a lot of people in the US had a very negative perspective of the Muslim community, that everyone was a terrorist. And that's an unfortunate thing. But that was the way that a lot of people in my family saw it. And I was born in rural North Carolina, so not in a city, not a lot of exposure. When I was in high school, I started working at a diner in the local town, and it was owned by a Muslim family. Now, I had no clue that they were Muslim. I knew that they were Egyptian, but I had no clue they were Muslim. And then one day they were telling me about their religion and their faith and everything. And I had known them for probably 6 months. I'd been working for them 6 months at this time. And I'd really gained, I built a really good relationship with them. And when they told me that, I was like, really? You know? And it just shocked me because I'm like, but you're so nice and you're not a terrorist and you don't run around with turbans on your head. And, you know, so I had this false reality of that community. And so as soon as I found that out, my beliefs about the entire Muslim community changed like that. So it really depends on what belief you're trying to change. And yeah, there's so many different factors at play, but it could happen overnight or it could take years. It really depends on what it is.
Brittney, thank you so much. If anyone have the question, you can comment here. And Brittney, thank you so much. You have given me plenty of time. It was really nice talking to you, and beautiful words you have spoken so far. And it means a lot to me and my audience as well. I'm grateful for your time and your beautiful words.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So nice of you. And all the people who are watching, stay tuned, stay happy, stay home, stay safe. Thank you. Have very best luck for all your future concerns.